Hi. I've heard a lot about how Georgetown has been a lot better preserved than Malacca, for example. And as a Malaysian and an honorary Malaysian, well, a Malaysian by heritage, I was wondering, could you tell us more about the background of what's happening in various Malaysian cities with conservation of the built heritage, etc.?
With Georgetown, of course, it was because of rent control, which we had until the year 2000, and then the heritage movement was well on its way by the 90s. So we managed to survive the boom until 1997, and then there was an Asian financial crisis, and then the pressure was not as much to redevelop. But with the other cities, there hasn't been a very strong local civic movement, unfortunately. Malacca is just that Malacca was always much smaller in terms of the size of the city, and because of that, it tends to be overwhelmed by new development. And now that there's a development, there's reclamation, and there's new development around it, even kind of, distorting the context of Malacca as a city that grew up along the river. And then as for the other towns, small towns, people are starting to become very proud of their small towns. It's just a starting point, I would say. So there are restoration projects here and there, even in small towns, but they tend to be quite isolated. And the local governments are still, they can't really tell the difference. They don't really have a strong policy for heritage. So I think in Penang we were quite lucky that we had the heritage movement starting relatively earlier. KL is, there is Badan Warisan Malaysia, a Malaysian National Trust, but I think the development there is so strong, that they are just focusing on a few landmarks.
Oh, I don't really know what to say to that. I did a TV episode on Malaysia for my TV show called City Time Traveller, and it was almost like a quest for identity. And what I found, which was very enlightening, I mean, I go to these places, and it just makes me realize how little I know. No matter what you get put up on a pedestal. You get to talk on TV, you get to talk at these events. But the most humbling experience is when you're actually going into these cities and you just always discover something new. And what that insight into KL gave me was that, again, that layering of history, the sort of that element of the Mughal Saracenic sort of architecture influence in the British colonial times when you're looking at the KL railway station, and then that quest for post-colonial independence. There was that need to try and embrace modernity, but still try and also embrace an element of motif, and we see that in the National Mosque. And then by the time you get to the 90s, it's almost kind of hero building, and Mahathir Mohamad's sort of quest to kind of leave a legacy in the Petronas Twin Towers, which, albeit a modern high-rise building, the plan form has a lot of symbolism in the Islamic geometry. And then you've got, on the other hand, people like Ken Yang, who's eschewing the need for cultural motif to actually say that the climate of the place can actually generate the architecture. And so something can be resolutely modernist and quite technologically advanced, but is all about the climate as opposed to trying to have motifs and symbolism. And so what that tells me is that there is no one defining piece of identity. One needs to look at it as a collective, and each era tells its own story. So that was my take anyway.